Yo, what's good? It's a boy Reviews, and heavy spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 Episode 17, aka Episode 41, you have been warned. So, after much delay, I finally received the Blu-ray for Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, Episodes 15, 16, and 17. I'll do the comparisons for the other episodes later on, as well as doing a Blu-ray unboxing in another video, but let's just focus on Episode 17. Now, back when this episode was released, this episode blew up online, and people going crazy for good and bad reasons. Now it is no secret that this episode had 30% of the intended vision, which was quoted by one of the animation directors. The animators at MAPPA would go back and slightly retweak some scenes, and they finally did, and what can I say that hasn't already been said online? It looks bloody brilliant, mate. First up, they slightly added a shade over Haruto's face in the Blu-ray as he's running away. Next up, they lightened Fushigero's face in this scene. Next up, they completely reanimated this scene. In my personal opinion, I slightly preferred the television version with how flickery the animation looked. Next up, there's slightly more detail behind Fushiguro on the building. It really does set the mood with how moody and edgy those black patterns look behind him. Next up, Mahoraga has better shadow and lighting in the Blu-ray version, as well as more detail being drawn behind Mahoraga in the Blu-ray. Next up, they slightly extended the animation on the floor where Haruto is standing. Next up, Mahoraga has better shadow and details in the Blu-ray version. Next up, they removed some of the ghosting and dimming. Next up, when Sukuna blocks Mahoraga's punch, the Blu-ray added a slight camera shake, giving a bit more intensity to the scene. Next up, this scene of Mahoraga being tied up is entirely reanimated. I mean, my gosh, when you compare it to the TV version, it's night and day. His new design is more consistent with his overall design. The same can be said for this scene of Mahoraga's top half sliding off. Not only is this design redrawn and has better shading, but even the car behind him has better shading as well. Next up, this scene of Sukuna touching Mahoraga has all the ghosting and dimming removed. Next up, they completely redrew the backgrounds behind Sukuna, as well as Sukuna's teeth biting into a metal pole, and they darkened it as well in the Blu-ray. Next up, this scene is a blink and you'll miss it moment. Mahoraga is slightly repositioned. Next up, this entire sequence of Sukuna and Mahoraga flying through the sky has slightly redrawn backgrounds and slightly reanimated scenes. The ghosting has been removed of this scene of Sukuna swinging. Next up, the Blu-ray slowed down the speed of the construction crane falling down. The Blu-ray added more smoke behind Sukuna, and the animation is slightly retimed. Next up, just before Sukuna gets hit by the train, the entire animation sequence is completely reanimated. The Blu-ray has better character designs and better animation. Next up, they removed the black swirls coming from Sukuna, as well as not only reanimating his expressions, but also darkening it and adding more shading. They also got rid of the dimming in this flash scene. Next up, they completely reanimated this scene of Sukuna falling through the train. While the Blu-ray has less detail, the animation and fluidity is infinitely better. I love the art style choice in this scene. And they completely reanimated and redrew this scene of Sukuna throwing the train, as well as darkening the entire city behind the train falling down. Next up, they recolored the building on the left hand side, and look at the sky in this shot. My gosh, so much detail and clarity in the Blu-ray. And then right after this scene, we get a brand new animation of Mahoraga. Ooh, I just love how smooth it looks. I like how he spins round and around like a Beyblade. The background also got redesigned as well. Next up, after Sukuna swipes away Mahoraga's arm, the TV it cuts to this shot of a building, but the Blu-ray added a completely new scene that lasts for over a minute. And bloody hell, mate, I don't know what to say, dude. I just don't know what to say. This entire sequence of Sukuna versus Mahoraga is just amazing. My gosh, the animators at MAPPA are truly talented, my dude. And it's such a shame that the production was unfortunately not the best when they were initially making this episode back then. Oof, I really envy the Japanese fans who get to watch this entire episode in 4K in the cinemas. I mean, seeing this scene in 4K on the big screen, my gosh. I will post a separate video of this entire sequence with the audio in a separate video, as well as all the other scenes with audio that are completely brand new, so stay tuned for that. Next up, I love this sequence of Mahoraga getting out of the building in the Blu-ray. The colors, the composition, it looks infinitely more cinematic. Next up, they completely redrew the windows in this building in the Blu-ray. Next up, the buildings, the debris, all have a new color palette. Next up, they reanimated the flames of a plane falling down, and the Blu-ray actually cut the close-up of the plane falling down in favor of a brand new sequence. I love it, mate. Look at these shots. Look at these beautiful low-angle shots of the plane and Sukuna and Mahoraga. It just gives the episode more energy. The Blu-ray also removed the ghosting and dimming as the plane explodes, and they completely redrew Mahoraga falling into the swimming pool, as well as removing some of the bubbles, which I quite liked in the TV. But bloody hell, mate, I love some of the extra details on Mahoraga's hand and body as he's inflating. Next up, they reanimated the swimming pool exploding, as well as adding additional clouds, smoke, and adding a red filter in the sky. Just looks eerie, mate. And once again, not only do we have more reanimated shots, but we also have a completely brand new scene as well. Of course, I will also include this in a separate video with the audio, so stay tuned for that. But mate, I gotta talk about this first few seconds of Sukuna swinging from one of the lampposts, skating on the floor, and then chucking one of the debris towards Mahoraga, all in one shot. It looks juicy. It looks beautiful. Next up, I really like this change in the Blu-ray, darkening the buildings and reanimating this explosion. Next up, Mahoraga has better detail and shading. However, I must admit I did like the red filter in the TV version of this shot. But at the same time, I appreciate the added details on the left-hand side in the Blu-ray. Next up, they removed the light/highlights on the train windows, and this zoom out shot of the interior of this building is a little bit faster in the Blu-ray. Next up, we have another new animation of the city absolutely being leveled. Next up, they reanimated this scene of the girl looking at her phone. She went from a Sony looking phone in the TV version to a Samsung looking phone in the Blu-ray, which in my opinion is an upgrade. And this entire scene of the girl talking to her friend is completely redrawn. The Blu-ray removes one person as well as redesigning the characters. Next up, I just love how cinematic the city looks in the Blu-ray. I love how you see each building being disintegrated one by one, as well as the girl holding her phone being Thanos snapped, and I like the extra detail of the phone cracking as well. Very nice, MAPPA, very nice. But sadly not very nice for the unfortunate civilians. Next up, they completely removed all the dimming and ghosting of Mahoraga walking towards Sukuna. This beautiful shot of Sukuna has no changes whatsoever, which already looked perfect in the TV version. Why go back and reanimate it? An interesting change the Blu-ray made was removing the flicker animation of the city lights. Next up, they added an extra tree in the Blu-ray, as well as slightly shrinking down the buildings in the background. Next up, I'm gonna be honest with you, I love the way both scenes look in the TV and the Blu-ray. I can't quite tell which is better animated, but I do appreciate the extra 2 shots they added in the Blu-ray. Next up, not only did they reanimate the scene of Sukuna, but added more keyframes, making it even smoother. It really just looks appealing to my eyes. Next up, the Blu-ray removed all of the dimming and ghosting and added better lighting and shading to the explosion, which I absolutely love in the Blu-ray edition, as well as darkening the silhouettes and smoke behind the buildings in this shot. Next up, it looks like the Blu-ray actually removed some of the details of Yuji's back. The Blu-ray also removed all of the credits, as You Are My Special is playing in the background. Yes, You Are My Special still actually plays in the Blu-ray. His entire character model is lower down, as well as it actually being a little bit shorter than the Blu-ray of him walking. And that's it! Those are all the major changes of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 Episode 17. All the other scenes are exactly the same from TV to Blu-ray, there's no changes whatsoever. But in case you still want to see those scenes, I'll do a separate video showcasing all the other scenes in the episode that have no changes, but in case you still want to see them, I'll show them to you. So subscribe for that. Tell me in the comments down below, what did you guys think of all these changes? Did you like them? Did you hate them? Like this video, subscribe for more Jujutsu Kaisen TV versus Blu-ray comparisons. Stay tuned for episodes 15, 16, and the brand new deleted scenes of episode 17 with the audio that I'll be doing. But thank you for watching, and as always, a boy do the view signing out.